I'll make just a couple quick comments. First is I'm really excited about this academic year and what's ahead for us. You heard from three of our outstanding coaches, Jesse and Mark Wetmore and Danny Sanchez, and I think the prospects for all three of those fall seasons are really good. I'm really excited about the student athletes and the coaching staff that we've put together in all of our sports. I think the leadership that we have from those coaches and the quality of student athletes that we have in our program is really good, and probably the best it's been since I've been here since 2013. I'm also really proud of what our student athletes do off the court and the playing field. Academically, we've never been better. It's a tribute to Chris Livingston and her team. We just had our first cumulative GPA over a 3.0 for our term and then overall. So we're really excited about that, on par with the student body. Our student athletes continue to do a great job in those areas. I also want to mention that ticket sales for football are going really well. We're going to have big crowds this year in all the games that we play at home. We anticipated that, but I think the enthusiasm that Coach Tucker and the energy that he's brought to our community is really outstanding, and I think people are anxious, as I am, for the start of this football season. Also, just you'll probably see some of the construction that's going out in the stadium. There's nothing wrong with the stadium. We're just upgrading our Wi-Fi, and hopefully our fans will see a noticeable difference in that this year. And our football field, our guys that grow the grass do it better than anybody, and we're excited for our first home game against Nebraska that first weekend in September. So with that, I'll just open it up for questions, talk about anything you'd like to talk about, and as soon as Mel gets up here, he'll kick me off the stage. Questions?
How excited are you to have Coach Tucker, and what led to the decision ultimately here, sir?
Oh, there.
How excited are you to have Coach Tucker on board?
I'm really excited that Mel's our head football coach. When we went out to find the best coach for the University of Colorado, I took it as a privilege and an honor to be able to go out and find that coach. All the boxes that we had to check off, he checked off all those boxes. He brings an incredible amount of success that he's had in his background, having been a football player under Barry Alvarez, and what he was able to accomplish at Wisconsin, and then the tenure that he had at LSU and Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia is pretty significant. And then you throw in a minor fact that he was a defensive coordinator in the NFL for 10 plus years at some really great programs like the Jaguars, the Bears, and the Browns. So, I think when you're in the home selling a student athlete on coming to Colorado, and you've got that background, and and you sat in those draft rooms, and you know what it takes to get the top players to the next level, I think that makes a big difference. And so I couldn't be more excited about he and JoJo as part of our family, and the prospects of Colorado football for the coming years, I think, is really in a good position. Yes?
Fully recognizing that the money doesn't come from one pocket, go to another necessarily. But to what extent, sitting here today, have you been able to mitigate the financial buyout of Mike McIntyre, and how much does it set back the athletic department?
Well, look, we when we made the decision, we took all those factors in play, obviously, and we were able to finish this fiscal year. We were able to fund the first half of that buyout, and then because of an accounting principle, the additional revenue or the additional payment that we'll make in January was included in this year's budget, and that's why we showed a deficit in our budget. But I think going into it, we knew that our ticket sales for this coming year would be better. And, we do a great job of fundraising, and there's some other factors, from contract extensions and things like that. What it has done, for our program is, I've told our staff that we're going to operate at we'll be flat from where we were last year. Everybody's on board with that. They know that. And I think the prospects of what's ahead and what our football program can generate for this athletic department is going to be significant moving forward. And for us to be able to compete at the level that I want to compete at with all of our sports teams, they all need more resources. When football and men's basketball, those are our two biggest drivers. When they're consistently winning at a high level, it means a lot. So all the buckets will rise, and I'm very confident in our revenue generation and the way we handle our budget. That it's certainly a little bit of a setback, when you have to have a payout like that, but we're well positioned for the future, and I feel really good about that.
Rick, right here.
Yes.
What attributes were you targeting when you hired Mel, and how have you seen those specific attributes play out throughout the course of the offseason, first few practices here, and his time in Boulder in general?
Yeah, again, I wanted somebody that had achieved at a very high level whether it would be as a player or a coach. And he did that. But I also wanted somebody that could come in and bring an accountability and a discipline to this program that I felt we needed moving forward. And he checked those two boxes. And one of the things that I guess that I wasn't, didn't know as much about when we were talking is that his energy level is almost as good as mine. You can tell him that when he comes in, but he's just got the right energy level. And when I sat in his home, and the other thing is recruiting, because for us to be successful, we've got to recruit the very, very best student athlete in the country, regardless of where they are. And when I sat in his kitchen table when we were having our discussion on a late Wednesday night, I asked him who's the best recruiter on your staff, and he said, "I'm not trying to be cocky, but I am." And I've seen that. I mean, every day he's recruiting, and for us to be successful, we've got to recruit the very top student athletes in the country, and I think he's done that. And again, every day he's focused on recruiting. So all those things, the recruiting, the discipline, the accountability, and his background of success, all were areas that we were focused on.
You mentioned the Wi-Fi upgrades. Anything else with Folsom Field in the coming years that you've kind of prioritized that you want to improve?
Yeah, there's a few things that we want to improve. Obviously we need to improve the sound system at some point. But again, it's a function of money. But we need to do that. We need to fix the west side of the stadium, our Flatirons Club, and we need to redo that whole area. I'd like to do that in the next 2 to 3 years. Because I think it's an important part of our atmosphere for our fans. And beyond that, we just added 2 great clubs in the last 4 years. And, this end zone used to be half full, and now it's full every weekend. And so we need to fix the west side. That'll be a real priority for us, probably our number one priority. We've got needs in all of our other sports, our lacrosse field, we need some upgrades. We need some upgrades with lights for soccer, and we'd like to have an indoor tennis facility. There's a number of things that we need, and our event center, we need to make some upgrades over there. So there's a lot on our plate, but and we'll prioritize those and get started on those fairly shortly.
Larry Scott has floated the idea of starting games at 9 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock here. You said at the time, well, I got to think about that a little bit. I don't really have an opinion. I was wondering, in the 2 or 3 weeks interim, have you come up with an opinion?
Well, yeah, I have a little more of an opinion. I guess I was a little surprised at that when it came out. But look, a 10 o'clock game makes sense under certain conditions. And, we practice in the morning, so competitively, I'm not as concerned about that. I did see Coach Peterson's comments from Washington, and, he said you have to get the student athletes up at 3:30 in the morning and sleep, and all those things are important. But the way we practice, our student athletes are here very early in the morning. So I think from a competitive standpoint, I'm not as concerned. Hosting a game here would be a real challenge for us to do that, and particularly in early fall when you've got your youth soccer, your youth football leagues playing. We've got a number of fans from Denver, Colorado Springs, some, from Grand Junction and others. That would be a real challenge for them to get here for a 10 o'clock game. However, there's some things that would be interesting about doing that. We could all go home and watch football at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But right now it's kind of a wait and see for us. And I know Coach Tucker and I have talked about it a few times since, they talked about that. And I wouldn't anticipate that you'll see a home football game this year at 10 o'clock. I could almost guarantee that because we do have some say in that.
Hey, Rick, I'm just curious if you have a sense of if you'll be able to keep the Big Red Horde out of Folsom on September 7th.
That's always been a challenge here, right? I mean, all of us that have been here, and one of the reasons we wouldn't play this game in Denver, because obviously if you play a game like that in Denver, you're going to be able to sell 20,000 more seats, and that's meaningful. And look, I guess what I would say about that game, I love that game. I heard somebody say, I wish we played that every year. So do I, because I do think having those rivalries and the traditional games, that makes sense because both sides are very rabid in the fan base. And, I just know that their fan base is very respectful when we play in Lincoln. I can tell you stories about when we were here in the 80s and how they treated us so well. And I know our fans will do the same for them. But we've tried to make every effort we can to keep the red out, and we'll continue to do that. And other than bringing Visine, I think we've done everything we can at this point. Yes, sir.
At Pac-12 Media Day, there was some behind-the-scenes grumbling about some of the announcements Larry Scott made. How confident are you as an athletic director and your fellow ADs in the conference in his leadership and where the conference is going?
Well, look, I look at the conference leadership as being all of us, the athletic directors and he and his staff, and I'm very bullish on this conference. I think every league and every business has some cycles where they're not at the level that they'd like them to be, and and certainly last year wasn't a good year for us as a conference for a lot of reasons, and we had a lot of negatives. But it's not all Larry Scott. There's some ownership that we have to take in some of the things that we've done. And I'm really bullish. I think our football programs with the coaches that we have in this league, I think our best days are ahead of us. I think you'll start to see us come out of that. And we have had a little bit of a down cycle in both football and men's basketball. And then, basketball, I have a lot of confidence in where our conference can go in that regard. I like the 20-game schedule that we'll input in the 2020 season. And all of our other sports really do a great job. And, we win a lot of national championships. And, we've got to correct some things. The officiating was another area that brought a negative light to our conference. And, as athletic directors, and I sat on that committee and having an outside review of that, I think that was important to bring back that credibility of our officiating crew. So again, it's not all Larry. There's a lot of other elements that go into that, and I feel really good about where our conference can be and will be in the next few years. Yes.
Historically, the Mile High Showdown, or the Rocky Mountain Showdown, has been at Mile High Stadium, and it's averaged 70,000 plus in terms of attendance. How important is it to bring those games as they rotate back and forth between CSU and CU respectively? How important is it to bring those games back to the campuses and discontinue playing those games at Mile High Stadium?
Yeah, look, I've been trying to. I wanted to play this game on campus since I got here, and I think I've been pretty vocal about that. And because I think a rivalry game like that belongs on our campus. I do think there is games that could be played there that make sense. Because I think, you know, as the host institution, you know, with a different game, we would control where everybody sits in those games. And I think part of the challenges that we had from our fan base is, you know, we got two sidelines here, and we're trying to squeeze them in on one sideline over at Mile High. If we play a game, you know, a significant game in Denver, I wouldn't exclude that from our thinking moving forward that we play a game. It won't be CSU. You know, I think we should play CSU. I don't think we should play them the first game of the year, and we won't moving forward at this point. We'll take a couple years off. We'll go to CSU next year and play in their stadium, and Joe Parker's done a great job down there with his facilities, and Mike's really done a good job as well. And so, you know, I like that rivalry. I don't necessarily think we need to play it every year. That's why we put Air Force on our schedule. I do think playing on the Front Range makes sense for us because it gives a great exposure for high caliber football on the Front Range, and so we'll continue to look at schools to play in that regard. But David, I don't know, we're scheduled out to 27, 28 at this point? 2027. So, and we've got some good schools that we're bringing in: TCU, Texas A&M, Northwestern, you know, Georgia Tech. Well, that'll be a fun one. I'm really excited about that one. We can settle it. But 2028, and so we're playing some real quality opponents. It's something our fans have wanted. And some would say, well, you've scheduled a little tougher than you need to, but I think if you go back to '89 season and the '90 season, arguably two of the best years we've had in our history, you know, we're playing schools like Washington, Texas, Illinois, Tennessee. We had some great teams on our schedule, and so I'm excited about that part of it too, because I think our fans deserve that, and excited to bring them back. And the CSU series, I know we're playing in 23, 24, will be the next time after next year. But our last one in Denver.
Well, Rick, you talk about that. You talk about all the teams that you're bringing in non-conference wise. What advantage does it give to CU in order to bring all those teams here through Folsom Field?
Well, look, I think from, you know, if you look at the networks that are broadcasting our games, they want marquee games, right? We need to be relevant. And so as we started scheduling those top opponents, we know that we've got to get our program up to speed because we want to be relevant. And those are the kind of games that, as the networks are deciding who they want to broadcast, they want those marquee matchups. They want to see us play Texas A&M. They want to see us play Nebraska. 2 years in a row, we're a national game on that day playing Nebraska. And having that kind of exposure for us is significant. You know, we live in one of the greatest backdrops in all of America in college athletics. And for people to be able to see that on a TV broadcast week after week, you know, when in the 80s and the 90s, you know, our fans got used to this, and I still hear it. We played almost every Saturday at 2:30, and it was a national TV game, and we need to get back to that. And I think scheduling quality opponents, as the networks look at, and particularly if you look at the new TV deals, a lot of them start coming up beginning in 2023, 2024 with all these conferences. There's going to be a real push for these networks to, you know, make sure that they get these marquee games. And I think if we schedule properly, we're going to be in the conversation, and that's exactly where Colorado should be.
Besides football, what's your overall vision for all the athletics here at the University of Colorado?
Well, I think my vision is, and it's in our strategic plan, and it's in our vision and mission statement, you know, we want to compete and win championships, and that's my vision for all of our sports. You know, and so I have expectations that we can compete against anybody. I mean, we've got something really special here, just in where we're located, and the academic part of our institution is outstanding. And, you know, when you combine those and the conference that we're in, I think we ought to be successful in all of our sports. And that's kind of what we talk about with all of our coaches, is that we want to win championships. And, you know, we've got to make sure that we provide them the resources. And we're not providing all the resources we could in all of our sports at this point. One area that I'm really proud of that we do from a resource standpoint is what we're doing for our student athletes in the areas of health and wellness is significant. I think we lead the nation in a lot of the things that we do in mental health, in nutrition, academically, what we do with our sports medicine. We've got a sports medicine center on our second floor that has an MRI, X-ray machine. You know, we care a lot about our student athletes and the things that they have. And so, you know, from that perspective, we provide them all the resources we can, and we invest more and more each year. But, you know, from a facilities and some of the other little things, recruiting budgets and that, we could do better, and we will moving forward. So.
With your schedule, there's obviously a lot of focus on the Nebraska game, but a week later you play Air Force for the first time in almost 45 years. So what kind of interest have you seen from fans? Have you had fans talk to you much about that game?
Yeah, a lot. I think the one that's not a big fan is this big guy that's going to come up here in a minute. But playing Air Force, you know, the way they play and the style of play is really challenging for our football team. But I think it's, you know, that game, you know, I think it'll be one of our highest selling games. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, which is a little bit of a challenge with youth football. But playing at 11 o'clock in the morning against Air Force and, you know, with all their fans coming up from the South and around, I think it's going to be a great atmosphere, and it's selling really well. All of our games are selling well, and again, I think it's the energy that people feel noticeably in our community and the excitement about the upcoming season.
There have been some rumors about perhaps a large endowment being made towards the program, and I know you not necessarily can speak about that, but
I certainly can.
oh well, that'd be great if you could. With the mission of particularly adding a sport or two, is that a push within the programs at all, or in the athletic department?
Yeah, so let me, and somebody showed me some of the things online about this big endowment. If there's one out there, I don't know who it is, because I'm certainly not having those discussions. So I think it's just rumor, and it's not accurate unless it's something that I don't know about, but generally I would know about those kind of things. So, you know, I think for us, I wouldn't anticipate adding any sports at CU in the next 3 to 5 years. What we're going to do is make sure that we have all the resources we need for our 17 programs that we have in place. Today, we want to make sure we give them the resources that they need. And then once we do that, and you know, we have the success that I think we'll have in the future, I think we'll start having conversations about that. But that may be the next person that sits in my seat. No, that was funny, Mel. I liked your expression there. Any other questions? Because I just saw Coach walk in. And any other questions that anybody has? One more. Yes.
Coach, we know that the Denver community is all Broncos first for the most part. Rarely is CU being talked about. What does CU have to do from a football standpoint, basketball standpoint, in order to be in the front of the minds when it comes to radio, when it comes to TV? What needs to be done for CU athletics to be talked about more? Yeah,
you know, I don't think, I mean, the Broncos are always going to lead the charge, right? And the Rockies had an incredible season. The Avalanche had an incredible season. I mean, it was a great sports year. And again, for us to get the exposure that we need in the Denver area, we need to be relevant. We need to play these big games, and we need to win them, and we need people to watch what we're doing. You know, for us to be successful, we need Denver to come out and support us, no question about it. I know Dave Platty's done a great job of trying to get us involved more from a media standpoint in Denver, and we'll continue to push that. But we've got to consistently win in football, men's basketball, and all of our other sports, and be relevant. And that's what we're focused on. Thank you all for your time, and let Dave or